What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson, here. Let's get right into things today. Wanted to give you guys a Josh Giddy update. He remains a free agent, a restricted one at that. There have been talks that have been ongoing. I do widely expect the Bulls to make him a part of their plans for the next 4 or 5 years anytime now. But it's interesting to note the Bulls are negotiating from a position of strength at this point in time. Now, you don't want to alienate Josh Giddy. That's an important element to this, especially if he's going to be here for the next 4 or 5 years. But having the ability to match any offer sheet given to Giddy, given that he's restricted in free agency, is going to play a big role here. I think the Bulls learned in a tough way at Patrick Williams and the way things went down with those negotiations. They don't want to go back and do that again. So, playing the waiting game isn't so bad here if you're Chicago. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets making that big move for Michael Porter Jr. yesterday, sending Cam Johnson to Denver, is going to change things a lot when it comes to Josh Giddy's number one suitor outside of Chicago, and that's Brooklyn with the cap space that they came into free agency with. So Brooklyn may kind of spin off of the Josh Giddy sweepstakes. I don't know if they're going to be a player in that way going forward, given all the money that they did tie up to Michael Porter Jr. So that's something of significance there. I don't know if the Bulls are using that as leverage. They certainly can. I think ultimately you're going to see a deal around $30 million a year is the figure that's been thrown out there. Again, if you can get him and work out a deal for less, I could see his market kind of shrinking now in terms of Josh Giddy and what other teams are going to offer him going forward. So I think it's a smart move by Chicago. It remains to be seen what the figure that is it's going to be associated with Josh Giddy's deal, what that number is going to be. It'll be interesting to continue to hear rumors on that. But again, I do expect him to be a Chicago Bull for the next couple of years, and I do think it's a smart move by Chicago given the situation that they're in and kind of what they've done and what they plan to do with possibly some of these other guards on the roster at the moment. So we'll keep an eye on that, continue to monitor it. But Josh Giddy, it's been reported the Bulls are kind of playing the waiting game, which I don't hate at all. You don't want to get bitten twice like they did with Patrick Williams there. So it's a decent strategical situation there for the Bulls front office and how they're handling it. Surprisingly, I know the Bulls have made a lot of questionable decisions from up top. So we'll continue to monitor that and see when that deal comes across in free agency here. I wanted to kind of switch gears, talk about a guy who continues to kind of be rumored in the Chicago Bulls news here, Anthony Simons. Now, he was recently traded to the Boston Celtics. Nikola Vucevic is the guy who is expected to be moved. We continue to anticipate this, and I will continue to cover this until he does get traded. Anthony Simons for a Vooch deal, though, not out of the picture here. I think this makes sense for both sides. I think for Boston, they just moved, Luke Cornett moved on to San Antonio there, signing that multi-year deal yesterday. They did sign Luka Garza, who was, a role player for the Minnesota Timberwolves the last couple of years, very limited minutes. So I don't know if Luka Garza is the answer for Boston there in the short term. Al Horford could be on the move here very soon. So there's a need there for a guy like Vooch. He could fill a void for kind of a gap year while Jason Tatum recovers for Boston there in that Achilles injury. So makes a ton of sense there for Simons. He would fit well in Chicago. He loves to play fast and shoot a lot of threes. That fits exactly to the style of play that Billy Donovan likes to instill in this roster and what they've done, particularly this past season, in a good way. So, and Vucevic being on that one-year deal, he would be a great replacement for Kristaps Porzingis moving out of town there. So I just think it makes a ton of sense if you're both sides, so we'll continue to monitor that. I think that's an interesting scenario for both teams. I know Anthony Simons just did land in Boston, but I wouldn't expect them to turn down an opportunity to to fill a pretty decent void there now that Kristaps is out of town there. It would also come at a decent clip there in terms of pricing for Boston. I know Vooch doesn't come extremely expensive in that one-year deal, so we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll let you guys know if the rumors continue to gain traction when it comes to that type of move there. Just a quick note here, the Chicago Bulls did bring back a guy on a two-way contract, Emanuel Miller. He's a 25-year-old forward. He will be returning to the Bulls on a two-way deal, the team announced yesterday, so this is a guy who joined the Bulls midway through the 2024-25 season, played mostly for the Windy City Bulls in the G League there. He averaged 16.5 points a game to go along with just under 7 rebounds a game in 25 appearances in the G League. He did make his NBA debut on March 4th, playing 6 games for the Bulls over the final stretch of the season, where he tallied 10 points and 8 rebounds in 25 minutes. With these two-way contracts, teams can carry up to 3 players on these two-way deals, allowing guys to split time between the G League and the NBA. So I do expect Ulbrich, the guy they drafted out of Australia, to be one of those guys on the two-way deal. And now Emanuel Miller, at 25 years old, will stick around with Chicago for the remaining, the near future here. So it's an interesting move there. We'll see if he continues to, get some opportunity to play at the NBA level. But a guy who looked decent in college. I think he played some decent ball with the Windy City Bulls this past season. So it allows him to get an opportunity to develop in an organization in the Bulls that have room to make this deal. So wanted to kind of brush over that briefly. And let's take a look as well at, a free agency update here. Some moves that went down yesterday. There were some big ones, probably the biggest one to this point. We'll get to that in a second. But there was a move in Trey Mann agreeing to a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Charlotte Hornets. Duncan Robinson has signed a 3-year, $48 million deal with the Pistons. That's an interesting move. I think Duncan Robinson can fit really well in Detroit for a team who played a really, really competitive first round against the New York Knicks. And now with the Beasley stuff going on, it kind of moves on from that distraction if you're Detroit. So I really like that signing. You kind of gearing up to be without Beasley there. You give Duncan Robinson his deal, and you're well on your way there. So that's a solid option there for Detroit. Tim Hardaway Jr. signed a 1-year deal with Denver. Another veteran role player moves to Denver there. Jakob Hurtel agrees to a monster 4-year, $104 million extension to stay in Toronto. I like this move. He's been a cornerstone for that team for some time now, and definitely a fit there when it comes to what Toronto's trying to do. They have a lot of young guys. Dennis Schroeder agrees to a 3-year, $45 million deal with the Sacramento Kings. That Kings team continues to stack the veteran talent there, obviously with Levine still intact there, as well as DeMar DeRozan, and now you get Dennis Schroeder. So an interesting approach by this Kings organization. Not really sure what direction they're headed. They looked like a promising young organization just a couple years ago in that playoff run where they ultimately lost to the Warriors in 7 games. But it's an interesting team there when you look at the Sacramento Kings. Miles Turner was the huge move that went down yesterday. It's in the Bulls' neck of the woods. He's staying in the division with a 4-year, $107 million deal to go play with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, this is surprising. I can't imagine the Indiana Pacers organization was too happy with this one. He kind of left them out to dry in the sense that they just made a run to the NBA Finals, and it was one of the more exciting ones in recent memory. Tyrese Halliburton certainly cannot be happy with this move as he rehabs from that torn Achilles and gears up to get back. I think he was probably expecting Miles Turner to kind of stick around in Indiana, sign that big deal in Indiana, and be a centerpiece for that team all while he's getting ready to return. So in this move, the Bucks did waive Damian Lillard as well and stretched the remaining $113 million on his deal in order to acquire Turner there. So interesting to note here, Damian Lillard will receive all of his $113 million that he's owed while rehabbing his torn Achilles in Portland. So he'll go be surrounded by friends and family back in Portland while he rehabs that Achilles and gets the entirety of his contract. A pretty decent deal, if you ask me. That's a lot of money to be paid for not playing a single minute in the NBA for that the upcoming future here. So an interesting thing to note there. He will obviously be able to choose his next destination on his own time as well. So Damian Lillard is in a pretty good situation there. But yeah, some names that, some big, decent signings yesterday, Miles Turner being the massive one. So we'll continue to keep an eye on these moves. A slower period in free agency upcoming here, I think. For the Bulls, I will continue to look at the two names that are going to be at the front of all the talks here. It's going to be Josh Giddy and then Nikola Vucevic. So we'll continue to monitor those guys. I know I saw a lot of you guys in the comments yesterday stating the urgency to want to keep Ayo Dosunmu in Chicago. Now, I don't disagree with that. I'm with you guys. I think he's a very solid player when it comes to outperforming a market on a guy of his price. So he's definitely given the Bulls a ton of value. I just think when it comes to Ayo or Kobe, you're going to either have to move on from one or the other. I would be shocked if the Bulls did move on from Kobe White, to be honest with you. That's why I kind of put Ayo Dosunmu in those talks. But you never know with this Bulls front office, as they've shown us time and time again. You never know what they're going to do, what trigger they're going to pull. So, I'm interested to see how that pans out, what this roster kind of looks like moving forward. So, a lot of exciting things going on with the Chicago Bulls, a lot of uncertainty too. It shows you the NBA can be a business where you think one thing's going to happen and then the total opposite occurs. And in terms of, Turner there with Indiana, that's a perfect example of that. I don't think many people expected Milwaukee to swoop in and make a deal for him there. So, we'll continue to, take a look at what the possible scenarios are for these Chicago Bulls players, who some other free agent names are to keep an eye on, as well as we approach the Summer League kicking off here. We'll take an approach in terms of how to preview those games and who's going to have a lot of playing time there in terms of the young guys. I think Noah Senge is going to be very exciting to watch here, as well as Ulbrich. I think those two young guys will have a lot to show in the Summer League in terms of their first playing time within the organization. So we'll keep an eye on all that stuff. I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest today, and we will see you tomorrow.